Let's talk about outsourcing and how to manage the switch elegantly and manage the transfer elegantly. I've often heard of a bit of a struggle when it comes to managing the team during an offshoring or outsourcing initiative, and that struggle is to be expected because of potentially staff within a shared services organisation looking at a future where they're going to be made redundant. How do you keep your shared services organisation staff excited and engaged and keen to overperform within their job and within their responsibility when they know that at the end of doing that job well, they're going to be losing that particular job to an outsourcer or a person within India where it's going to be offshore to? How do you manage that?
But it's a really good point, Susie, and it's always a challenge. I think there are three things that most greatly affect, how well this can be managed. The first is actually a historic one, and therefore it's worth organisations thinking about that at any point in their evolution. And that is, what's the nature and the quality of the relationship between the employees and the organisation? What's the culture within the business? Because when we're looking at loyalty of employees, at times of significant change, their historic experience and relationship with their organisation does influence their behaviours. So for an organisation that has felt they've been well looked after, for individuals that feel they've been well looked after by their organisation, there is strong and effective relationship between management and employees. It's much easier to manage that transition and basically retain the critical skills during the transition period. So that's the first checkpoint. And if as an organisation you think, actually, we've been through already a lot of upheaval and change, and we've had a cadre of weak management, or our employee engagement survey is saying that morale is low and the relationship with the management isn't strong, well, then you know that you're going to have to invest much more and be more strategic around the retention period. So that's that first theme. What's your starting point, effectively? The next two themes to look at. First is around change management. There are a number of things that you can do early on in the transition process which can significantly aid this difficult period. And the third piece, and I'll come to a bit more detail of that, and the third piece is basically around incentivization. So from a change management perspective, getting clarity on the timelines early on is really critical. It seems obvious, but it's amazing in how many finance transformation programs or shared service center, outsourcing programs, the actual timing is quite late to be defined or late to be communicated to employees. So being able to talk about the roadmap and the different phases in that roadmap are really critical. The next piece from a change management perspective is getting clarity on which roles are at risk and which are not. And of course, coupled with the previous timing piece, during what extent of period will those roles need to be in transition? How long will the period be? And again, that's often a moving feast in a transformation program. So I would say invest early in getting clarity in the timing, the project plan, timeline, and communicate that early. One of the big lessons learned is, from an employee perspective, it's much easier for individuals to remain committed to a role that they know is going to terminate in the short to medium term if they feel communicated to early, and they don't always need all the final answers. They're happy often to work with time windows, but many organizations feel uncomfortable to talk about that until they know the exact date. So clear communication and clarity on timing are really critical. And then from a business risk perspective, getting clear on which roles can you really not afford to lose during the transition period, and looking at, are we going to invest in that? So some sort of short-term retention incentive. That moves us on sort of out of change management into incentivization really generally. And that is, to answer the question, what's going to be in it for the individual to stay committed to their role, to help with the transition, which is often a time of, more intense work environment than the business as usual. And the what's in it for me is obviously partly the incentives, but it's also the opportunity for the value in their career experience. So being able to show on your CV that you have actually been able to move core processes that you were responsible to an outsourced provider actually has value in the recruitment market. But being able to talk to employees about what they're going to get out of this period, They'll also get greater exposure potentially to consultant teams, so they'll see different ways of working. They'll see their own business in a intense project management environment, and we know that project management is an increasingly in-demand core skill in shared services. So there's a lot that the individual can gain personally that will have future personal value for them, in addition just to the financial incentives. So I think it is a case of having a number of strategies to help secure the individuals during that period. And the last piece that I would mention is effective leadership of change during that period. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Make sure your leaders and your managers are highly visible during this period.
Often an outsourcing culture will be really very, very different to the company culture of a shared services organisation. And that can cause conflict, resentment, and a whole raft of other uncomfortable or negative feelings. So how can a shared services leader look to manage the different cultures so that there is in fact minimal disconnect?
Really good question. I think the starting point is considering cultural fit as one of the criteria in terms of selecting an outsourcer. It's often seen as a sort of level 2 or level 3 criteria. But when you look post outsourcing go live at what's likely to cause it to go wrong, a lot of the issues are in fact cultural and behavioural. So giving more credence to that consideration is really critical. But then once you've chosen your partner, there's going to be a cultural mismatch to some degree. So how are you going to bridge it? What I've seen in some clients doing very effectively is early on helping their employees understand more about the outsourcers to business themselves and their culture. So being open about what are their priorities, how does their business model operate, and what does that mean for core behaviours? Communicating the rationale for why this or outsourcer has been selected. And then it's a more personal basis, making sure there is stronger sense of personal connection between the outsourcing team and the in-house, either retained finance team or the retained shared service centre team. So looking to be quite considered about how do we build effective personal relationships. The other piece is around the SLAs. So in constructing the SLAs, talking more widely, not just about the performance indicator outcomes, but also the behaviours. How are we going to deliver those together? And where there are issues, actually having combined discussions, outsourcer and the organisation around what's gone wrong, not just from a performance level perspective, but from the behaviour, relationship, communication perspective, and troubleshooting that together. So looking at some of those continuous improvement processes, how can it be seen as a partnership to continually improve the nature of the relationship rather than it being a them and us? And certainly that them and us attitude is often very prevalent. So I think from a management and leadership perspective is what can the leaders and managers do to start visibly breaking that down?